Hello and welcome to Changemakers Show, where we speak with inspiring and influential changemakers and the people who support them, up close and personal. So get cozy and get ready to listen to our changemakers' stories and advice. Ask your burning questions and get inspired by their impact so you can be and bring the change you wish to see in the world too. Now let's get started with today's show.
Great. So thank you so much, Peter, for joining us today and sharing your perspective on the social enterprise ecosystem. We're very happy to welcome you.
I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, as I was just telling you before we started the recording, so the social enterprise ecosystem is evolving super fast, and there's so many new entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs as well. And so our intention with this series of interviews is to help entrepreneurs navigate this growing ecosystem and also find the support that they need to launch and grow their impact. So I'm very curious to know, just as a quick intro, what exactly is your role within Social Enterprise UK? And maybe you can tell us, before we go into the mission of your organization, what was your background and what made you want to join or start? I don't even know if you've started it, Social Enterprise UK.
So my job is I'm the chief exec, and I have been here for 8 years. Mm-hmm. The role of Social Enterprise UK is to be the national voice and trade association for social enterprises. So we are a membership organisation, so we have thousands of members who pay us each year to do a good job representing them and helping to evolve the ecosystem, build the visibility of social enterprise, and to create market opportunities for their businesses. So that's kind of what we do. We're also very involved in research, looking at the impact of social enterprise and how it compares to other forms of business, and then developing policies with governments actually right around the world to help them curate a supportive ecosystem so that they can also build a thriving and successful social enterprise sector.
Wonderful. Wow, that's an important mission actually. And
yeah, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an important job. Before I took the job up, I didn't start the organisation. I ran a social enterprise myself and started one up in about 2000. In the year 2000, I started my first social enterprise. Over 10 years, I kind of grew those enterprises, the impact, the visibility, the profile, the brand. And in 2007, I was asked to become a social enterprise ambassador for the government. And that's what led me to have an interaction with the organisation that I'm now chief executive of. I saw its work. I recognised how important it was, and thought that I'd have a go if they wanted me of leading the organisation, which I now lead. So yeah, it's been great.
Wonderful. I think UK entrepreneurs are so lucky to be in such a maturing ecosystem, because at Changemakers Association, we actually gather social entrepreneurs from all around the world. So they are all in very different ecosystems. And for some people, they are quite isolated, or there's no specific regulation tailored to their specificities. So we really see how this actually has an impact on the type of impact that they get to create.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the organisation that I now lead has had such a catalytic impact on informing government through evidence and research, helping to design policies to build the ecosystem. it's been absolutely critical and catalytic in getting the UK social enterprise sector to where it is today. And it's obviously with great pride that I carry out my job here, as does the rest of the team. Everyone takes the role and responsibility very seriously, and the opportunity. And we seek to demonstrate the values, behaviours, attitudes of social enterprises in the work that we do here as well. We are a social enterprise ourselves.
Wonderful. Yeah, actually, I had a question about the team, because you have this role in the ecosystem, and then you mentioned that you have around 1,000 members. But what about so your own internal operation? How many people work within your organization, and also how has this evolved since the beginning of the journey?
So we've got a couple of thousand members, but our network is much, much bigger. So on our database, we have probably more like 30,000. We have about 20 staff working here. So we separate the work into 3 or 4 distinct areas. One of that is membership services. So members can pretty much pick up their phones and contact us, and we can help and support them through a whole variety of issues, problems, challenges, and provide advice, training, events, all that sort of stuff. We've got a team that works exclusively in building our relationships with the large corporate PLCs that exist. And so we have a relationship with maybe 20 very, very large businesses in different industries, from banking, pharmaceuticals, and we're supporting those businesses to get more directly involved in social enterprise, either through buying from social enterprises, so creating that new kind of queue of customers for our members, and these big businesses can buy at volume. So you make one introduction, and all of a sudden, an order can come in for tens of thousands of products. You're not introducing a single customer each time. We also get corporates to support the work through communicating to their own staff teams, through their corporate social responsibility budgets. And so we have a team dedicated to manage and maintain those private sector relationships. Obviously, we have a team also focused on government. And so there is another, distinct team focused on, keeping up to speed with what's happening across UK government policy, taking difficult issues like Brexit, and thinking about the implications of Brexit on social enterprises, particularly those trading overseas, and coming up with solutions and lobbying for, kind of practical solutions to overcome those issues and problems. So we've got a public affairs team that works government, but also with local councils, local authorities, that kind of sub-national level of government, and also with institutions like the World Bank, the United Nations, the International Labour Organization, huge numbers of international relationships to be had as well. So we've got kind of a public affairs team, we've got a private sector team, and then the third bit really is our communications team, which worked with people like celebrities, the press, social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, using all of these channels to get the story and the message of social enterprise out there as far and as wide as possible. And so that's how my team is organised. And then we have a small unit at the middle of all of that, which looks after our own organisation in terms of HR, finance, compliance, chief exec, board, but in terms of the external face, communications, public affairs, and kind of business relationships.
Yeah, wonderful. And so for the social entrepreneurs then based in the UK, what are the criteria, if any, to become a member of Social Enterprise UK and benefit from your membership?
So we do have members across the private sector, the social sector, those that are academic institutions as well. But if you want our certification badge, And our certification badge is just here somewhere. So if you want to put this on your product, let me just see if I can, there you go. If you want to put this on your product, like they have, that means that they are a certified social enterprise, and we do that certification here. And if you want the badge, then you need to be a business that has a primary social purpose, and that social purpose has to be articulated or reflected in your governing documents or the rules of your company. So that's the first thing. Secondly, you have to commit that at least 50% of your profits are either being reinvested back into the business or are used to achieve that social purpose. So the profit distribution is also an important one. Mm-hmm. And the third one is around ownership. So to wear the Social Enterprise UK badge, you must have some form of kind of social ownership, is how we frame it. So that means it could be a worker cooperative, it could be owned by beneficiaries, it could be owned by the community, it could be owned by no one. What it can't be primarily owned by are owners who are seeking to maximise their financial returns. So it tends to have a different kind of organisational structure than a PLC, a publicly listed company that would normally just have shareholders who have a legal right to expect that decisions taken are primarily in their interests and not in the interests of workers, suppliers, the planet, communities, staff. So, you know, the social ownership is the third important aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you said, because it also helps to define what a social enterprise is. And I don't know how big of a question it is in the UK, but you know, with all those different countries having different legislation or no legislation at all, there's actually like like a cloud on like what a social enterprise actually is and who can call himself or herself like that. And so that's great that you provide not only the certification system for the enterprises so that they can better communicate the fact that they are a social enterprise, but also like to bring awareness on what that is, because there was greenwashing a couple of like decades ago, and now there is a bit of social washing as well.
No, you're entirely right. I mean, first of all, the definition originates from social enterprises themselves. So this isn't government saying this is what a social enterprise is. This is social enterprises saying this is what we are. And it's really important for us in the UK that we do define social enterprise. And that's partly because, as you started, you know, we are in the fortunate position of being quite a mature ecosystem. And when you start developing the ecosystem, when you start looking for government help and support, whether that's through tax breaks, through funding, through procurement, then you can only develop policy for a type of business if you can define that type of business. If you're kind of, well, it's a bit this and it's a bit that, and, you know, we don't really want to define it, then you can't expect policies to emerge from governments or from the UN or from the European Commission that will support these businesses, because if they're undefinable, you can't develop policies around them. So I think at some point in the natural evolution within any country, you come to a point whereby you think, actually, it's time we did define this. I think when you're starting out, you know, you have to be less precious. When you're building an ecosystem, it builds over time, and certain things, you know, follow a natural sequence of evolution. The definition has been debated around what a social enterprise is, you know, for 20 years in the UK. Those discussions still continue and will still continue. But at the moment, as the national body for social enterprise, we've been able to go and talk to all of our incredible members and get some agreement and some consensus about these criteria and about who we do and who we don't certify. And once we've got that definition, it means that we can continue to advance the ecosystem by, you know, developing positive policies. The other thing is some of our big corporate customers, the big companies that we work with, also they want to be able to define what businesses are social and what businesses are not social, so that when they use their corporate responsibility or when they are using their procurement to buy from social enterprises, they know who and what they are buying from. They're not buying from this vague, ever-changing, ever-evolving definition. It's in black and white, and everyone sticks to it. And broadly, people kind of, are content, I think.
Wonderful. And I'm actually curious because you mentioned that the members have access to a support team within your organization, and then it means like you have such a privileged view as to like what are the biggest struggles, or what are like the questions that are coming back again and again and again. Like, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 challenges that social enterprises face today?
Well, I'm also very privileged to travel extensively overseas and talk about the development of ecosystems around the world. And every country that I've ever been to actually faces very similar challenges. And they tend to be these ones. So first of all, access to affordable finance. Finance for investment, whether that's working capital or whether that's investment for some physical procurement. A lot of investors don't like the idea of having a primary social purpose. It means that they may not get as much return, or their return may not be prioritized as it would be within a traditional company. So, for traditional investors, that can be difficult. Secondly, the very nature of social enterprise means that because we are putting society, environment, our workers ahead of profit, it means that actually at times, not always, but sometimes there will be less margin because you're trying to operate to an ethical standard. You may be less profitable than if you're, really, really pushing down on costs from your staff and your suppliers, for example. So often if the margin isn't as high, then it means that the business case is less clear for an investment to flow in. And then thirdly, many social enterprises do not have the opportunity to issue equity. So they can't, take investment in return for shares. So therefore, investment coming into social enterprises is most commonly structured as debt rather than equity. And again, a lot of investors like the idea of buying a stake in a business rather than simply providing it with credit. So these are big issues. We in the UK over the last 6, 7, 8 years have been working very hard to create a social investment culture here. So a new category of investor that is interested in getting social outcomes, not just financial returns. And that's been going quite well. That is almost like a separate ecosystem. It's developing successfully, but it still needs to evolve further. And we're learning all the time about what works and what doesn't. So access to finance all over the world is number one issue. The second issue that we get reported to us is around the way in which public sector commissioning and public sector procurement tends to favour large multinational PLCs and doesn't necessarily give the same opportunities of access to small businesses or social enterprises. And this is a big issue because social enterprises are really well placed to deliver public service because of their ethos, and yet because of their size or their scale or because of the culture within the public sector, those opportunities don't emerge. So there's a lot to be done on the reform of commissioning and public procurement. And then the third area is awareness. People want to tell the world about all the good stuff they're doing, want to tell people about the fact that they are different, they're a social enterprise, and still people come back to us and say, our bank manager, our funder, our investor, our customers, our staff don't understand this term. How can we help build public awareness that there is a different way of doing business, and that way of doing business is fundamentally more just and fair and sustainable. And so there's a big piece to ensure that we're not confused with charity, which is very different, but also that we're not assumed to be as implicated with big business in scandals around tax avoidance or low pay or work insecurity, or operating in ways which put profit ahead of people's social obligations. And so that's the third challenge, and it's our job at Social Enterprise UK and my job to address those three areas, but also all of the other ones that people report to us.
Yeah, wonderful. And I'm curious, do you measure your impact? And if yes, how do you, what are your KPIs?
So, yes, we do. Of course we do. We advocate the highest quality of impact reporting and the highest levels of transparency, so people can make their own judgments about how good your impact reporting is. We publish an impact report every year. We constantly strive to make that better and better each year and change and evolve the way we measure our impact. Traditionally, it's been done, we are a small organisation. We've got 20 staff. So, we try and make sure that our impact report is also proportionate to the size of our business. We report on things like pay ratios between senior and junior staff, but also between men and women. We report entirely on the diversity of our workforce in terms of gender, ethnicity, disability. And so we report transparently on all of those kinds of obvious issues. We also go and ask our members each year about what they think of us. It's an anonymous survey. We try and ensure that at least 10% of our members respond. And that's sometimes quite difficult to get high levels of response to, do you think we're doing a good job surveys? But when we do that, and we normally get about a 15% response rate, our members tell us that we are doing a good job, and they principally are our primary customers and beneficiaries. So, their opinion does matter. We also monitor the amount of media coverage we're generating, both in terms of the traditional mainstream press, news channels, newspapers, magazines, specialist press that's sector by sector, and then of course social media. And so we look at how influential our Twitter reach is, for example, and how we've grown our Facebook likes or Twitter followers or Instagram followers or whatever it may be. So we monitor in that way. We also go and ask our stakeholders what they think about us, not just our members, but our corporate partners. This year, we're going to try and do something a bit different. And this year, we're going to try and link our impact reporting to the 17 global goals. These are the UN's SDGs. And what we're encouraging our members to do is to follow our best practice and to adopt those 17 ambitions and targets into our reporting. So what has our contribution been to the 17 goals? What's our methodology for accounting for that contribution? And also being honest about what we can do and what we can't do in terms of monitoring our impact. But we keep on learning, we keep on improving, and we are committed to continuing to invest in being better.
Wonderful. So there is both the internal impact of your own organization, the satisfaction of your stakeholders, and then your reach and the visibility side of things. Great, really interesting, and I'm gonna be following your next report to see how you integrate the 17 goals, because I've never seen a report with that, so it's teasing my curiosity. And then, so talking about the 17 goals, I actually have one last question for our interview today, which is more about where do you see social entrepreneurship in 10 years from now? How do you see that evolve also towards not just the ecosystem itself, but towards the sustainability goals?
I'm not optimist, but I have to be an optimist because the world is so bleak and frightening right now that you need all the optimism you can find. My view is that the world is going to become increasingly challenged. Actually, it's going to be increasingly challenged by issues like mass migration, driven by climate change, food scarcity, water scarcity, natural disasters. There are so many kind of challenges: a growing population, political instability, conflicts, terrorism. All of these issues are as a consequence of the world being out of balance, and we have driven ourselves to this place in quite short history. Really, it's really in the last 150 years, since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, that we have organised our economic systems and structures in the way that we see today, and the outcomes that those decisions have created are for everyone to see. And so I think that social entrepreneurship is much needed. It's about how we reform not just businesses, but whole economic systems and structures. We need to do that if we're going to address these massive challenges. And therefore, social entrepreneurs are currently, nowhere near enough mainstream as they will need to become. Our strapline at Social Enterprise UK is Social Enterprise, the future of business. And we believe that the future of entrepreneurship and the future of business has to be much more social and much more environmental. We have to find new ways to reinforce our democracies through much greater routes of democratic participation in our businesses and commerce and economies, not just through our governments. These models of cooperation, of creating shared value rather than shareholder value, must become normalized, must become the way that everyone thinks about doing business. And my hope and ambition is that we get to a point, maybe within 10 years, maybe that is too optimistic, where the term social enterprise is redundant, because this becomes just the normal way that we do business. When we do business, we think about our whole impact, and we think about the consequences, positive and adverse consequences, on natural habitat, on the quality of work for people who we employ, on the communities where we work, on our suppliers, on our investors, and we take a much broader view of what value actually is. It's the only chance we've got of sorting ourselves out from these multiple messes that we've created, and we need to be quite radical. So in my view, I think social enterprise is on the ascendancy. More social entrepreneurs will identify in this space, and that we will, within the next maybe 20 years, see some radical reforms to capitalism, which tame it, actually, which make it fit for purpose, which make it capable of coexisting in harmony with the people on this planet, and also, the other organisms that we share this planet with. It's the only route we've got, and we have to pursue it. So in 10 years, maybe it'll be 20, but someday what we're talking about will be completely normalized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also, I don't know if it's a hope or vision, or but we do have embedded that notion of the fact that we are walking towards a world that doesn't need social businesses anymore, because all the businesses will be socially and environmentally conscious, and not just subsidizing little bits of parts of their action to having kind of a way to balance their negative impact, but actually make their positive impact the heart of their mission, basically.
And I think, as well as being, do no harm as a business, I think we also have to tackle the issue that within a globalized world, we're seeing huge concentrations of power and wealth, which we've never seen before. So the very idea that 8 men 8 men can own more wealth than 3.75 billion people is extraordinary. And we have to find business models which challenge these concentrations of power and wealth. The issues of climate change and sustainability are critical, but actually how we ensure that prosperity and opportunity is made and shared widely and fairly is also going to be critical. And that means that the current businesses we have can't just become a bit more social and a bit more environmental. They fundamentally have to change their DNA. You know, they have to become something that they are not currently almost capable of doing. So we need to redesign. We need to redesign and reboot the system, not just encourage businesses to do it a bit better.
Yeah, and that's why the current social enterprises have to thrive and become those like case studies for others to aspire to function in the same way. Because if like all the social enterprises are like struggling and like staying small and not too visible, then that won't.
What's interesting is that they're not. In the UK, they are certainly not. They are growing faster than mainstream businesses. But more importantly than just growth, because growth is a bit of a strange way of assessing impact or anything else, what we see is that talent, so graduate talent coming out of universities, is going into social business. It's not going into corporate business as much. What we're beginning to see is investment shifting from traditional profit-based investments to social investments. And we're beginning to see customers drift from the traditional large businesses with whom customers have lost trust. And we are beginning to see this incredible loyalty between the products and services that social enterprises offer and their customer base, who kind of understand that these businesses are fundamentally different and are trying their best, not always perfectly, but trying their best to balance the needs of the business, the staff, the suppliers, the users, the investors, the planet, and those businesses are being rewarded with talent and with customers and investors. So
exactly, yeah,
reasons to be cheerful.
Wonderful. I'm so happy that we finish up with this, because we talked about the challenges, the like evolution of the ecosystem, etc. But it's also so important to recognize the assets and the competitive advantage as well of social enterprises, and and how much young graduates, as you mentioned, want to work in or start their own social enterprises, and this is really what is gonna make it all mainstream as well.
When I started my first social enterprise, principally, it was a bit of a weird thing to do. No one really understood it. And most social enterprises existed in delivering public services. Today, what you see, and I don't know whether you can see, let me just see, but right behind me here on this shelf, I've got an incredible range of products, from coffee, olive oil, from beer, from bottled water, to buses, to chocolate, to ketchup, to soap, that are all just, reinventing the way business is done through the sale of everyday products. Yesterday I was at an event in Oxford University, and there are people that are coding and running coding businesses as social enterprises, that are doing pharmaceuticals as social enterprises, that are doing football clubs and swimming pools, and the talent and the breadth of activity that's now taking place is frankly amazing.
Wonderful. All right. Do you have any final word, or I don't know, a call to action for the social entrepreneurs that are watching the show?
I would say, networks are really, really beneficial. When I started my first social business, it can be a lonely experience. And therefore, finding your peers, your supporters, finding your way around the ecosystem can be catalytic. It can really, really accelerate your progress and development. So recognize the fact that you are in a fortunate position. There are lots and lots of people that want to support you, want to see you succeed, will give you a leg up and a helping hand if you and when you need it. So go out, build those relationships. Don't be afraid to ask. And don't be afraid to sell, because we are businesses. We are social businesses, but we are still businesses.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Nice talking to you.
Did you enjoy this episode? Never miss a show by signing up for updates at www.changemakersassociation.com/show. Or if you're on Facebook right now, type the word show in the comments below to get notified directly inside Facebook Messenger before we go live with new guests. Changemakers Show is proudly brought to you by me, Danielle, and my awesome partner, Solène, and our brainchild, Changemakers Association, the place to be to get connected with the knowledge, mentoring, and community support that every changemaker needs to succeed and thrive creating sustainable impact. We hope to stay connected with you and see you soon.